Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of the anime Toradora on Netflix. And I overall enjoyed this anime and would recommend it, but there's certain issues that kind of pop up with it that kind of dulled my enjoyment of it. But overall, this is a nice slice of life romantic comedy kind of one that I would definitely recommend to anyone to really watch because it's pretty enjoyable and pretty funny. I mean, I would laugh out loud at just like a lot of the crazy shenanigans that would be going on here. And it's one season, unless for some odd reason 12 years later they decide to do a sequel series, and it's 25 episodes, and it goes along at a nice clip. You don't really feel like it's dragging out or anything. So, yeah, that's like the basic kind of stuff I've got for it. So, this follows two of the kind of most infamous kind of students at this one high school. One Ryuji, who looks like a delinquent because of his face, and he's trying to always kind of like mess with his hair or whatnot to stop that from happening because he could just look at somebody. He's like, "Oh God!" It's funny when he's first introduced, like walking to school. He just looks at these two guys, and they freaking give him their wallets, and then he turns them into the lost and found, like Jesus. And then of course Taiga, who is the palm top tiger, and she's just like a crazy kind of like explosion, pretty much. Like if you get her angry, she just goes off the hilt and everything. I would pretty much compare her to like a warlord, except really short and will still kick your ass. It's interesting dynamics with that. So they of course bump into each other, and of course this whole school's like, oh shit, fight, 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 kind of shit. It's like we're usually like, no, and Tiger's like, I ain't having any of this, and their story kind of gets a little bit more interesting as he's dealing with something at the end of the day of school. He goes back to get his bag. She like falls out of a locker, and she thought that bag was somebody else's, and she's like fighting tooth and nail to have it. And we find the reason why is that when Ryuji gets home and we are introduced to his mother, who pretty much seemed pretty ditzy and everything, but she works at night in like this club to pretty much pay for everything and all that. But she's nice, airhead kind of sweet mom, and their pet bird. And he looks into his bag and sees that there's a confession letter in there. He's like, "Oh, this wasn't meant for me." But then he like looks into it and he's like, "There's no letter in here." So we then find out that she lives right next door. He's in like this weird little apartment building that's like very kind of traditional, kind of like run down, and then she's in like this really expensive apartment building, and she comes in the middle of the night with a fucking sword, trying to like beat the shit out of him. Like, get back! He's like, I didn't even read it. And they kind of converse and everything, and we find out that she was doing that to confess her feelings to pretty much Ryuji's only friend, Kinemura. He's like the vice president on the student council, really kind of chill dude and everything. And he's like, well, the thing is, you didn't have the letter in there. He's like, I'm just a klutz and shit like that. And of course, he shows to her that he has a crush on Minori, who's friends with Taiga. And he's like, yeah, don't feel so bad now. And it was really kind of a cool thing, and it really sets off this thing of that Ryuji is a really kind and considerate person. The main obstacle he has to overcome is that people judge him based on his appearance, and of course we are told that his father tragically died, and he got his looks from his father, and his father looked like a delinquent. We find out later on in the anime that is not true. Almost all the parents in this anime fucking suck. Almost, yeah, except for Ryuji's mom, and she does some like iffy kind of stuff, acting kind of like a kid a little bit. She's like the best one. Otherwise, I would be hard pressed to find an adult that is an actual really good role model in here. The homeroom teacher is just kind of like fucking nutso too. It's really kind of weird once you start thinking about it, and kind of disturbing. But since they both have people that they like that they can do influences with, they decide to team up and do their shenanigans on that way. So the first kind of part is them kind of tag teaming up and trying to do situations to show off their love and get to the confession stage with these respective people, while we see that their bond actually grows as we see that she comes over more often to Ryuji's house. He cooks her dinner and all that because she really can't take care of herself. Cooks her lunch and everything like that, makes it for her and all that. This, of course, leads to the school thinking that they're a couple, even though they're trying their hardest to dispel that rumor. But, of course, since this is kind of a romantic comedy anime, you kind of can see where this is going. Now, my biggest kind of issue isn't that there are kind of weird love triangle things going on. It's just we get to the strength of the series, of course, is Ryuji and Taiga. Theirs is the most natural kind of progression of what's going on, though I think that it gets accelerated towards the end of the anime, and that's bad in my opinion, but it doesn't affect my enjoyment as much as it would, because it's not completely breakneck pace destruction. Though, granted, if it had ended the way I was and did not continue a little bit afterwards, I would have been like, But we see that all the kind of side characters get to certain, what would I put it, stop points. And you don't really get that much movement on them until the plot demands that there needs to be a kind of movement on it, so it kind of fucks with the pacing until you get to those kind of instances. Like, we see that Kitamura brings in, he's going out with his childhood friend, Ami. Well, not going out, alright? They're just friends. And, of course, she gets introduced to Taiga and Ryuji, and, of course, she's a model and everything, and, of course, she acts ditzy and nice and kind on first glance, but then she starts screwing with Taiga, saying she'll wrap Ryuji around her finger and acting like a total bitch, and, of course, Taiga slaps her and has an adversarial relationship pretty much through most of it, even though it dulls down into a kind of frenemy kind of thing. Though, granted, I do like their relationship in the beginning because of the dub, how the voice actress for Tiger says, the bitch. Just the I'm like, yes, the voice acting in this is done so well and just really works. That's one of the great positives, along with the animation and all the different kind of shit that goes on. But she gets introduced, transfers into the school, and we see that at first she's pretty much teasing Ryuji until she develops feelings for him. Now, granted, you kind of understand why she develops feelings for him, but then it kind of just sticks, of course, to the holding pattern of she has feelings for him and does nothing really with them except teasing him and just doing nothing with it. Until it, of course, gets to the point where she has to deal with it towards the end of the series. We also see this happen with, like, Kitamura and Minori, because Minori, I was really kind of confused by at first. Because we see, as they are doing their kind of the story going along, we get to a point where she's doing stuff and then it seems like she's got feelings for someone, but it's not clear until you get truly to the end, and I'm like, it's either 50-50, I'm like Ryuji or Taiga, and every time it would kind of go longer and longer, I'm like, okay, so evidently she's probably got feelings for Taiga, I guess, but we find out at the end that she also has feelings for Ryuji, but stopped herself because she didn't want to screw over her friend Taiga, which happens later that Taiga distances herself from Ryuji because she doesn't want to harm the chances of Ryuji with Minori. It gets kind of weird. I'm like, oh, okay, alright. And evidently she's keeping herself busy to deal with these feelings. It's like, okay, there aren't as many clues or whatnot dropped, or not as clear clues are dropped. I'm always a fan for subtlety and having these things like pop up later on or whatnot, or like help for a rewatching to be like, oh, that's what that meant. But it just didn't really seem that clear to me that she was into Ryuji. But as we see, after the introduction of Ami, they start doing all these different kind of things. We have a kind of funny ass pool scene where we have to have Ryuji sewing in pretty much fake boobs for Taiga. And Ami decides to take them to the summer beach house, and of course that introduces some crazy ass shenanigans going on. Kitamura teaming up with Minori to scare the shit out of people, even though Ryuji and Taiga were trying to scare the shit out of Minori to do the kind of white knight kind of thing, so that way Ryuji could confess to Minori. And of course, we get Ami doing her things with pretty much teasing Ryuji and not dealing with her feelings with Ryuji. Then we get to pretty much the point where we're getting kind of close to kind of Christmas, and we see that the student council president Kano is going to be leaving, like almost like that, and that she's going to be studying abroad in America because she wants to be an astronaut. Okay, but from what I had been shown, now granted, she is a teenager finishing high school. All right, she seemed kind of airheadish and needed Kitamura to like remind her on stuff. Even Taiga had to kind of remind her of shit, even though it was like really insubordinately. But it gets to a point. Kitamura learns that and goes completely nutso futso, bleaches his hair, and acts like an asshole. Well, not truly an asshole. He's like, I'm not gonna run for student council president because somebody needs to take that up next year. He's like courting, running around crazy. It's like, I understand, but you need to fucking talk to somebody, bro. And his dad beats him up, like after he would like pretty much ran away from home and was hanging out at Ryuji's house and everything. And we find out that he loves the student council president. Now, granted, this is important because the year previously, Kitamura had confessed to Taiga and she had turned him down, mainly because she didn't understand her own feelings at that point, and then after that point had developed feelings for Kitamura. However, after he was rejected, that's when the student council president was like, hey, join the student council. And of course, with going through and pretty much devoting himself almost entirely to the student council, and doing all these different kinds of things, he developed feelings for her. Now, one of the important bits that also occur before that is that we learned that Taiga's father is an asshole because they had done this whole kind of thing. We see that the student council president did this whole blowout with this cultural festival. They did a pro wrestling match thing for their class, which was pretty different because all the rest of the classes pretty much did like cosplay cafe shit. But we saw that like Taiga was going to be the villain. She wanted her dad to be there. We had seen that the dad was pretty much going to be trying to be in her life, but he was just doing it to because he had pretty much fucked up another marriage. And well, fucked up his business and shit, and everything was just going nutso. We don't learn that until really after the fact. But it's like, oh, okay. Minori, of course, is pissed off that contact with the father was going on, and that leads to a rift between her and Ryuji because he never knew his father and wanted Taiga to try and at least reconnect with him. But fuck that, because he's an asshole and pretty much tried to use Ryuji to tell her that he wasn't going to be coming. And it was like, oh shit. And this was important because this whole cultural festival was important to Taiga and Ryuji and was like one of the last great blowouts for the student council. Setting off her pretty much being like, yeah, she tried to leave with a great mark and be like, leave. Alright. I'm on top. I'm good. Of course, Kitamura is going completely crazy and doesn't want to do all that stuff, so Taiga and Ryuji are like, we gotta get him back to normal. She decides to run unopposed for the student council presidency because Kitamura was going to be the only one to run anyway. And they're like, we're going to do like a horrible fucking job. I'm like, huh. Nice tactic. Alright. Of course it works. We see that Kitamura, after pretty much getting beaten up by his dad for not understanding what the fuck was going on, I'm like, Jesus Christ, these parents fucking suck. And dyeing his hair back and everything's like, yeah, I'll do it. And then we get to pretty much the ceremony. Like, yeah, there's an opposed. He decides to confess to the Kano chick, and she pretty much doesn't, like, deflects the fact, avoids it. Now, granted, it wasn't a public space. I'm like, what the fuck is up with you, man? I mean, I understand you want to confess and everything, but everybody's there. You're kind of putting her on the spot. You're putting you on the spot. Everything like, fuck. Of course, this leads Taiga to being pissed off, and we get, like, a really good action scene where the animation style goes completely and utterly awesome for action's sake. I'm like, I really liked what they did with this, and they just fucking, she goes in with this one sword, and her and Kano just fucking go at it. I'm not talking like one of those Hazzies fights. This was a fucking like, I'ma beat your ass and the objective is to beat your ass, as she's calling her a coward and everything like that for not saying anything or confessing her own feelings. He's like, of course I love him, but if I told him that, he would drop everything and give up everything just to follow me, and I couldn't bear that. And then of course we see the Kitamura comes in, thanks her for everything, that he loves her very much. Just like, damn, that's pretty good. Of course, this then leads to Kano leaving and Taiga being suspended for 2 weeks. I'm like, god damn. Of course, she has to write an apology letter, send it off, and then we see that it's got "fool" written on it. And of course, Kano is like laughing after she got it. I'm like, all right, more better follow your ass. This, of course, leads to various different kind of situations. There was at one point where everybody was trying to touch Taiga because they thought that touching her would do happiness, and we see that Kitamura is the patron saint of broken hearts and is like giving fucking love advice. It's like, all right. This then leads to pretty much some Christmas episodes, which I really liked because it showed how Taiga really likes Christmas and believes in Santa and all that kind of stuff, but it's a tempered kind of belief. It's not. She likes to believe that there is somebody like Santa out there, and that we see that she also sends presents to orphans. And I'm like, that's really cool, and really cool to kind of see her character development of that way. I'm like, wow, that's really awesome. Of course, Kitamura also wants to do a Christmas party, so they get everything kind of set up and all that. Minori doesn't really want anything to do with it because this is the phase of her being like, I don't want to get in the way of Taiga and Ryuji and all that. So Taiga also brings in one of her like most prized Christmas ornaments, the star, and the thing is, Minori accidentally throws a ball or hits it too hard. It goes into the gymnasium, knocks over the Christmas tree, and breaks the thing. But she is able to fix it, and the thing is, she's really broken up for him. Like, god dang, I feel you on that. But she decides not to go to the Christmas party before, and then Ryuji keeps trying to invite her so that way he can confess to her. But she's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. But of course, Taiga is able to talk her into doing it. However, the Christmas party comes up. Ami's still being her kind of like self, and Kitamura's going around as a shirtless fucking Santa. And just being a kind of weird ass. It's like, okay, cool, do your do. We see Ami and Taiga do this kind of cool little number and everything, but Taiga goes home by herself. But of course, Ryuji can't take that and decides to dress up as a bear Santa, and then goes back to try and confess to Minori. But she says, you know what, I don't really need to see ghosts or UFOs because that ties into their conversation that was pretty much a thing about like love, and pretty much turns him down. Of course, they keep trying to figure out what's going on and figure out other kind of steps to do this and get him to actually confess his feelings to her, because that needs to be done, at least to get that off of him and get it out there so that way it can be dealt with. So the next kind of part was, oh, okay, they're going to go to a trip to Okinawa, but the place that they were going to stay at burnt down. It's like, holy crap. So they do a ski trip. They, of course, are going out there. We see that one classmate's fighting with another classmate because she's trying her damnedest to get with Kitamura, but the other dude, we think, is trying to make sure that Taiga and Kitamura get together, but he's got feelings for her, and that like subplot goes, alright, cool, fine. I don't have any problem with it. It's just like another extra added element that isn't as dived into as it could have been. Not that it's horrendous, I'm just like, okay, that's cool, but if you put something in, try and do a little more with it. So there's like all these different kinds of things going on, Ami, and we get to a point where pretty much all the boys and Taiga are locked in a closet, and Ami and Minori are pretty much arguing about what's going on. Ami's pretty much trying to get Minori to recognize her feelings for Ryuji, because she's got feelings for Ryuji as well. They're getting pissed off at each other. They eventually get into a fist fight that knocks the hairpin that Ryuji was going to give to Minori, but of course Taiga's the one that kind of gives it to her, but Minori doesn't know. So Taiga tries to go and get the pin, but gets lost in a blizzard, and we see that our main of Kitamura, Minori, and Ryuji go out to find her, but Ryuji's the one that finds her, puts her on his back, and she's mumbling that, oh, Kinemura, thanks for rescuing me. I don't know what to do with my feelings because I love Ryuji. And it's like, oh shit. Alright, but Ryuji tells Kinemura to go along with this and to make sure that they don't do anything with that because he wasn't supposed to hear that. Of course, this then gets us to the end game portion of the anime where it gets into kind of like Valentine's Day. We see that Ryuji's mom really wants Ryuji to go to college. She's even picking up an extra job to do it, but she gets sick. And to keep her job at the bakery, Ryuji and Taiga decide to sell Valentine's Day chocolates there. And the rest of the group are trying to figure out what's going on with these, with the feelings and all that. Now, granted, we don't really see it, but it's kind of going on in the background. So, Taiga pretty much uses some chocolate and decides to make it for everyone as, like, thank yous and all that. And then, of course, we get to the big thing of the whole lie of, like, it was Kinemura that rescued Taiga, but, of course, Minori and Ami were not really brought into that kind of lie. And, of course, Minori is trying to force Taiga to actually finally confess their feelings because a big running kind of theme is like kind of maturity and like finding your own happiness, and Minori is like, I'm responsible for my happiness, you need to be responsible for yours. But of course Taiga runs out before anything of substance can really be dealt with on that, and of course Minori's going to be going after her, and then she asks if Ryuji's going to follow her, and of course they start running around and try and find her. And while this is going on, we learn of Minori's feelings for Ryuji, and it's like, okay, cool. Again, it's mainly just how rushed it kind of felt, and how we had felt wheels spinning kind of in place with it. But of course, we then start getting toward the endgame goal of them having to... They don't catch up with Taiga out the gate, but of course they have to do the bakery. I'm saying, but of course a lot. Jesus. Sorry about that. They have to work at the bakery to sell the chocolate and everything. They do it. Taiga's like, hey, there's a lot of money and everything. We see that they get caught up with both moms, Taiga's and Ryuji's, because around the New Year's and everything, Taiga was actually staying with her mom a little bit. A little bit longer than usual. But of course, Ryuji's mom is pissed off that he's doing a job and is like, you need to do your studies and everything. He's like, you're just afraid that I'm going to turn out like you and do all the same mistakes you are. And he was really mean on her. I'm like, Jesus, I understand the situation. Of course, while this is going on, we see that Taiga's mom is being pissed off at her. And the thing is, I don't really have a problem with it. It's just she's not really introduced enough for us to really get why she would be pissed off at Taiga. Taiga, of course... Damn it! Stop that. Jesus. Taiga is pissed off at her because she essentially went off and made another family and doesn't see how she enters into that. Granted, having a divorced family like that does have not strange, but feelings that are fucked up for everybody involved. She feels like she's like the last vestige of kind of probably the other family and doesn't have any idea how to integrate herself with that one. And she just runs off with Ryuji, and they pretty much get to a bridge and are trying to pretty much confess to each other. Ryuji kind of like, it kind of would have been better if I wasn't born, but Taiga's like, I love you. That would be horrendous because of how much she likes spending time with him. They get knocked into the river, and they're about to say that they love each other, but of course, damn it! Well, but of course, something pops up. Ryuji's phone goes off, and the people are like, it's Kinemura being like, what are you doing? What's going on? They give the lowdown that they're pretty much going to elope, and Minori's like, here's my savings. Ami's like, here, you can stay at my house, and Kinemura gives him fucking rice coupons. Because this dude's fucking insane. Kinemura is the weird kind of rock friend that stabilizes a group, but does the weirdest fucked up shit because the plot demands a shirtless Santa, a crazy kind of love interlude, and just fucking strangeness. Now, they've decided to do their kind of eloping thing, but they go back to try and get some clothes from their respective places, and Ryuji finds out that his mom has run away from home. It's really kind of fucked up that, like, the kid can run away and the mom runs away. It's like, God. But she leaves a note that if he's in trouble or anything, he can show the watch to his grandparents and they'd probably take him in. Which is what Taiga and Ryuji eventually do. They're trying to figure out a way to resolve this situation because they can't keep running. They've got to somehow get this locked down. He goes there, and like, hey, I'm your grandson. And we find out more information as everything kind of gets hammered out. They make a call to Ryuji's mom that he's hurt, but he's not. She comes to the place. Everything gets kind of hashed out. We find out that she got pregnant. The dude's like, I ain't doing this. Steps out, and she decides everybody was pretty much telling her to abort, but she wanted to have the baby, have Ryuji, and raise him. They have a nice kind of parental moment, and it's a nice kind of bonding moment with Ryuji's mom and the grandparents and all that. And we also see that Taiga and Ryuji are put in the same room as they're kind of coming to terms with their feelings and looking at the stars and sharing their first kiss, which was really kind of cute and really well executed. They did that pretty well. And then we find out that they're figuring out what to do. They get to class. They decide to go back, finish out everything. Ryuji has no idea what he wants to do for his vocation or whatnot, or after high school. And that's never even really brought up or whatnot. I don't have a problem with that. I don't need every answer, but I'm like, that seems like a kind of pertinent answer because the main important thing is his and Taiga's relationship. He gets back home. She then also decides to, for some odd reason, try and make shit up with her parents. Normally, I would be like, okay, that's a pretty pertinent decision. That's pretty cool because they want all their families involved. I get that. But parents are pretty shitty in this series and in this world, and it's like, I could be pretty much anywhere. But I'm like, your mom's an asshole, and your dad's an asshole, and you then decide to transfer and go live with your mom because she's pregnant with another kid, I guess, and it's never really kind of explained. I understand she wants to be worthy of Ryuji and all that kind of stuff, but it's never really explained how that really works with her plan, either shown or told or anything. It's just like, I want to be worthy of you and kind of fix this kind of stuff. I'm like, yeah, you should have fucking talked to them about that. Because the friends confront Ryuji about that, and he's like, I didn't fucking know. She didn't talk to me about shit. Because Minori's like, why didn't you do anything and run after her kind of shit. It's like, I would have if I would have known. Granted, not exactly to that comedic effect, but you get the kind of gist. And we then skip to a year in the future. And they've graduated, and we see that Ami's just getting all this kind of shit. Kitamura is going to be going off to study in America, following after his love. I'm like, alright, cool, good on you. Minori's evidently did shit with a bat. And then we also see that Taiga popped up, because it kind of goes full circle, because we see her in the homeroom and looking at the window, and Ryuji goes up to find her, and she's in the locker, and Ryuji says that he loves her because neither of them said it, and she even texted him, you didn't say it, ass kind of shit. And she's like, damn it, and headbutts him, and it's like, that was anticlimactic. And I understand that they're trying to look into, like, maturity, being a grown-up, being an adult, love and all that, and I think it hits more than it misses, but there's certain things I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about maturity-wise? Like, Ami, she fakes maturity, but she's childish with all this kind of stuff, and you don't really see any kind of growth on those other kind of things. It's like, what? I don't understand what you're trying to say here. I understand you're trying to say that there's something to do with maturity, but I mean, Taiga and Ryuji are able to still have fun, do things that people would consider childish, and are mature enough about it to kind of deal with the whole thing. Granted, the runaway elope situation was kind of like, what? But they then came to terms with, like, okay, that's not a solid plan, figured out a better one, and went forward with it. And that's where it ends, that they pretty much graduated high school and are going to be together. I don't need to know everything, but I kind of like a little bit more wrap up of what's going on, because I'm like, all right. And man, parents in this series, it's like, holy fucking shit. When you've got pretty much like one okay parent out of everything, it's like, and then of course you got the perpetual like single 30-something homeroom teacher that's going crazy about fucking condos and everything. It's like, jeez. Now, granted, she's a good comedic effect. It's used a great comedic effect with her of just going nuts and essentially sabotaging the whole thing with the whole pro wrestling match. And like, I approve it, but of course she didn't look at it well enough, because during the match, it's like, this is the thread of our homeroom teacher's destiny to her loved one, and she's going, she's losing her goddamn mind, and they even had to take her out of that. I'm like, good God. But I like seeing the evolution of Ryuji and Taiga's relationship. Their character development and growth worked very well. So for just on that alone, I would definitely recommend it. You'll get kind of annoyed that the side characters don't get as much development. Or I don't know if it's as much development or like as clean a development, because it goes start, stop, when the plot kind of demands it to kind of finagle it of what's going on into Taiga and Ryuji's relationship and the trajectory it needs to go. Action, not too much, but there are some fights in here that are like, holy crap, especially the one between Kano and Taiga. So if you're looking at this for like action and everything, no. Or violent, like extreme violence or anything like that, no. This is a very chill one. Granted, there is cursing, so take that into consideration with any kind of children around or whatnot, but I'd recommend this pretty much to anyone. And I wouldn't think that anyone would really regret it. It's a nice one that will probably stick with you a little bit. So those are my opinions on the anime. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.